Hello, everyone. It's Mrs. Wallace. I'm very sorry about yesterday's class. I think there was just a lot going on with the Model UN activity that was happening in the school, and it just interfered a little bit with the time frame that we had scheduled for class. So I wanted to just take a few minutes to give you some information about the debate that we have upcoming and give you a sense of the timeline and a few things that I will share with you, that will help you prepare for the debate a little bit. So, a few things. First of all, as I noted in class last time, we have two resolutions. A resolution is a statement that your team will either agree with or disagree with. The first resolution is the Mongols' overall legacy in world history should primarily be their role as conquerors who exploited and displaced other civilizations for their own gain. This is not necessarily a debate about whether the Mongols were good or bad. The question is really about how the Mongols should be remembered. I don't think anyone will debate that the Mongols were conquerors. They had been known for really ruthless conquests. The question is how much of their legacy is really primarily about those conquests, or do we also consider the way in which the Mongols ruled? So they rule over many of the groups of people that they conquered, and sometimes their rule and the conquests vary a great deal. And then also we can consider, kind of from the larger perspective of significance in world history, what are some changes that come about as a result of the Mongols, and how significant are some of those effects to the legacy of the Mongols? How do we go back and describe their significance in world history? And so historians actually do debate this, and the more traditional description of the Mongols was very focused on their conquests, and there's been some challenges to that in our modern times. So some of this really does kind of connect to a debate that historians actually have about the significance of the Mongols. The second resolution is also a space that historians do debate. Rather than an empire that protected its people and advanced its society, economically, politically, socially, the Yuan dynasty robbed China of its culture and values. Those students who find themselves on the affirmative for this resolution are essentially noting that the Mongol rule, which often gets described in China as the Yuan dynasty, this and it initiates under Kublai Khan, but he is not the only emperor in the Chinese in the dynasty of the Yuan dynasty. There are other emperors too, and arguably the emperors that follow Kublai Khan are fairly weak, and some of the issues for the Mongol-led rule really start to accelerate toward the end of their 70 years in power. So pandemics, like a giant plague, for example, a lot of economic issues, peasant revolts. There are a lot of particular challenges. So the time frame of the Yuan dynasty is not necessarily always the same, but if we look at it kind of over the course of its 70 years, do we see the Mongols rule as something where China is, kind of economically, politically, socially advantaged, maybe in comparative to the Sung dynasty? Or do we see the Yuan dynasty really robbing China of its culture? Is that something that happens? So there is significant debate of this also. So just kind of note, where there might be some good information about the Sung dynasty, how it might compare and contrast to the Yuan dynasty, and look at some historians who make, at various points in this argument. And as you get assigned a resolution, so I'll post today the roles that you have. We had about 4 or 5 students who requested to judge. I'm going to take those names and put those names in a hat. I will have my daughter pick those names teams. So that way, the 2 or 3 judges that we come up with, just know that I'll go through that process and be, kind of as transparent as I can. I would have done it in class on Friday, but we didn't meet, and I want to give you your roles so that you can start some of your research. Okay. So, a couple of things that I'm going to suggest to you, and I'm going to go over to Schoology for a second. So let me cut out of this. And then, certainly let me know what questions you have. But I'm going to go to Schoology for a moment. And sorry, let's put this like this. Okay, it's you can see it, and it should be clear enough. The very bottom of our assignments section, you can see the Mongols debate activity. There's a few things there that you're going to want to check out, okay? First of all, I do have a video clip of some of the content about the Mongols in China. Note that that second resolution is very focused specifically on the case study of China, so there'll be a lot of specific evidence and detail about the Song Dynasty, the Yuan Dynasty, Kublai Khan's rule, etc. In that first resolution, you have the ability to spend time on a variety of different case studies. So while you might choose China, you also can consider the Mongols in Russia, or the Mongols in Central Asia, and the Mongols in Korea, or whatnot. So there's a variety of different examples to look at. So when you start to examine some resources, just keep that in mind. You have a lot more case studies to focus on for the first resolution. The things that you're going to want to look at, first of all, the debate format. So this gives you an idea of what the debate is actually going to look like. One thing to note is we did have a snow day this week, so we are not going to start our opening arguments on Monday. You'll have Monday as a work day. You'll have Tuesday mostly as a work day. And the end of class on Tuesday will ask all of the groups to just share their opening arguments. These are essentially the key arguments that each group will touch on, and we just kind of do this as like a round robin thing. So one group goes, another group goes, another group goes. The opening case is only about 2 minutes, and it's really like a preview, almost like a shout out of what you are going to argue later on in your case. So that really means that our debate will start in earnest on on Wednesday. The first debate that we do will be one of the resolutions, so we won't say which resolution is going first. Everybody should be prepared on Wednesday. And the general format in each resolution gets its own time frame, so you're debating essentially in front of the other half of the class that listens. There is a case of sorts that you will develop. Every single team, so a team of about 4 to 5 students, will be assigned the affirmative or the negative. If you are affirmative, you agree with the resolution. If you are negative, you disagree with the resolution. So if you're the first resolution, the affirmative team, you're doing the first resolution, that's a debate that you're involved in, and you're on the side of the affirmative team, or the team that agrees with the statement, agrees with the resolution. The way that the debate works is each side essentially gets 2 opportunities to present their case. So the affirmative team presents their case for 5 minutes, then the negative team presents their case for 5 minutes. The affirmative team gets to go again and rebut some of the things that the first negative brought up, and the affirmative team can also introduce new arguments, so they get an additional kind of 5 minutes. So at this point, the affirmative team has been spending about 10 minutes of time presenting a case. And then last, the negative team presents their case, so they also kind of get the opportunity to rebut what the affirmative team has said. So it kind of goes affirmative, negative, affirmative, negative. In between those presentations of the case, there's also a questioning period for about 2 minutes. So after each of the affirmative, negative, the opposing side gets to ask questions for about 2 minutes. Okay, it's a very short questioning period, and generally the purpose of questions is to ask something that offers clarity. So maybe there was something the side was confused about and they want to ask. it's not necessarily the case that you put the other team, on the spot, or you try to push the other team down. Sometimes your questions are ways of getting information that you can then use in your next case presentation. The way that the cases can be organized, and this is what I'm going to suggest when you come to class on Monday, you're going to operate as a team. And essentially, you're going to want to create a Google Doc. The affirmative team should create their case, and the negative team should create their case. What you're really looking to do is to have a series of uh, uh, like a Google Doc that offers a few different pieces of information. The first is arguments, okay? You do want to consider, if you're the affirmative team, maybe develop somewhere between 3 and 5 arguments that will support the side of the resolution that your team is going for, okay? Think of this as like mini arguments that support your side of the resolution. Once you have those arguments, so we'll call them claims, so each side is kind of describing 4 to 5 claims that they might have, you want to then find evidence that supports each of those claims, and you want to cite that evidence. So maybe find some bulleted evidence that supports some claims. So you're organizing this almost like a cheat sheet of evidence. The other part of this that happens is that as students, you're going to use your words and your thinking to make the evidence really support the claim. Sometimes that's obvious. Sometimes you have to actually make the argument, and that requires a little bit of analysis. Okay, so you're working through how to take some of the evidence that you've collected and help it support your claim and communicate that evidence and that claim, to your peers. And generally what makes a debate is that each side really has very different claims, that are opposing each other, okay? So if you create a case that has somewhere between 3 and 5 claims, and there's evidence that supports each of those claims, you can kind of divide that particular Google Doc in half, and part of that case can be addressed by the first affirmative or the first negative, and then the second part can be addressed by the second negative and the second affirmative. The only thing that makes the second speaker's job a little bit more challenging is they also want to consider points that were made, by the first speakers. The first affirmative, when that person speaks, nobody else has yet had a chance to speak, so that can be a lot more scripted. The very last person to speak will have heard the entirety of a debate, so they get a chance to be a little bit more analytical and kind of position some of the evidence and position some of the claims, in more opposition with the opposing side. Okay, so this is kind of something that you will practice, but I think it will be an interesting and interactive part of what happens in class next Wednesday. The last thing I'm going to note is just where you can find some sources. So if we go back to Schoology, and I'm kind of going off of the hang on a second. I want to go to the exit here and just, whoops, sorry. Just have to use my little, if you go to materials for class, so instead of assignments, just go to materials for class, you'll see the Mongols debate resources. If you look here, you're going to see some intro materials. These are materials that everybody should read. So this is a really good way to spend some time this weekend getting involved in some of the background materials. So things that might be here: Crash Course the Mongols. There's a Bentley text on the rise of the Mongols. There's key Mongol leaders, Mongols in world history. So you've got a variety of different texts there. You might also then look, if you get assigned Resolution 1, look at Resolution 1 sources or Resolution 2 sources. So those are a few things that you can do. There's a couple of additional sources out there. There's podcasts, there's videos, no shortage of sites on the Mongols. So feel free to check out some of your own sources. You do need to cite them. And at some point in this, you should also consider some primary sources. There's quite a few sources of the Mongol conquest, for example, that are created by the people who were victims or recipients of the Mongols' conquest. Okay, so check out some of those sources. Look out for the Google or for the Word doc that will describe your particular roles, and you can also check out the rubric for this. It'll be a graded debate. Check out the rubric on Schoology under the assignment. Okay, have a nice weekend. I'll see you in class.